Hey y'all, Ben here. Just wanted to pop in before the episode and let you know there were some technical difficulties on this one. Nothing too major, just sometimes I sound like me and sometimes I sound like a ghost. Just wanted to give you a heads up and let you know that I'm not a ghost. Anyway, on this episode of Bite Sized, we are watching and discussing the 42nd scene of the movie Twilight. For those of you watching along at home, that's from 101:25 to 103:19. And now, on to the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bite Sized. If this is your first episode, here's what's going on. My name is Ben. I am your host. I'm watching the movie Twilight one scene at a time with a different guest every week. What that means is I take someone that I want to talk to about Twilight, and I send them a clip of the movie anywhere from about 30 seconds to 3 minutes. Then we talk about that for about a half hour. You know that because I'm about to do it. I don't know. Anyway, joining me today, I have a writer and a co-creator of Dusk, the Twilight parody musical, Morgan Kennedy. Welcome to Bite Sized.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to kick this off the way I kick off every episode. That is by asking you, Morgan, what is your history with the Twilight franchise?
We go way back. I would say Twilight is the thing that I can't seem to get rid of.
Are you trying to get rid of it, though? Because it seems like you're working very hard to stay involved.
That's so funny that you ask. There was a brief moment where we're doing another Edinburgh Fringe show this year that this year's version was going to be a funeral. Not exactly killing off the show, but the Twilight vampire transformation analogy there and all of that. So there was a brief moment in time where I entertained the thought of taking a nice break.
Let's start at the very beginning. How did you first learn about the books or movies, wherever it is you got on board with these?
I started with the books. I read the first book when I was 11. I just found it in my school library, and I honestly was horrified.
Really?
Yeah, I think I didn't understand what I was supposed to be reading into there. What stood out to me after I finished it, coming off of, I think I had just read whatever Percy Jackson books were out at the time and stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, that's the type of tone I had just been used to. And then I was just really scared of the thought someone could come in your window. That had never occurred to me before. And
that is, frankly, a better reaction to that than Bella has.
I wasn't old enough to be interested in the romance of it yet, I don't think. And I know you're in Chicago. I grew up in the Chicago area, and I was like, this is not a safe area to have people coming in your windows.
Definitely not. Nowhere is, honestly.
Right. I don't know. I didn't get a taste of small town life at all until I was 17. Similar to, I guess, Bella, I moved to a small town from my big high school.
Oh my God, you're just like her.
No, I'm so not. But that was similar, and I understood her a little bit better after that. So I moved to a smaller school, and I was like, wait, it feels less threatening, I guess. When you know everyone in town.
What was it that made you were initially kind of scared of them? What was it that made you, I don't know, keep going? Did you stop and then come back? How did that work?
Yeah, I did. I waited until the movie came out the following year. So I was in 6th grade, read the first book.
2007.
Yeah, and none of my friends had really started getting into it yet. And neither had the adults that I knew. And then when the movie was coming out, it was everyone was reading it. My mom was reading the book, and she couldn't go to see the movie, she was saying, because she was like, well, I'm not done with the book yet. So I kind of ended up seeing the movie on a whim. I was on a family vacation. It was too rainy to do anything outside. So my dad and I went and saw it. And he was like, is this going to be a scary movie? And I was like, it shouldn't be scary. But he knew vampires, and that was kind of his only point of reference, what he was getting into. And then we walked away, and he loved Charlie, and he loved the baseball scene. And I was like, this is a family affair now. Apparently we're all in this. So I immediately went and read the other books. I remember when the book Breaking Dawn came out, a couple people, I was at a summer camp or something, had read it, and they made up a completely different plot and told me that. And it sounded horrible. So
do you remember anything about what they told you it was?
Some of it followed the same kind of Bella and Edward have a baby and whatever. They said it was a boy named Dimitri, and I was like, okay. And just all of this stuff. And then they were talking like they knew Robert Pattinson in real life, and I'm like, no, you so don't. But they were really invested. They both both of these girls who were telling me about it, their names were, I think, I don't know, like, I'm just making something up, like Hannah and Kristen or something, and they both insisted I call them Bella. And I'm like, guys, I don't know what's going on.
That's just confusing, honestly.
It really was. And it was like not just them. I remember it was very bizarre that summer. And it kind of just kept going like that. So like Twilight has always been this confounding point in my life. Like all of my friends were into it in a way that felt really real to them. And I was more trying to understand the phenomenon of it for a while. And I don't think until recently, like rereading all of the books and stuff again, can kind of see exactly what adults were seeing at the time.
Yeah. How would you describe that, what adults are seeing in it?
I think that they love the escapism, and the part of like the romance and all of that everyone buys into is just more like otherworldly, I guess, but like young love in a way where it's like all very new and like they're discovering everything about themselves really like through each other for the first time, kind of. I'm like, maybe that is what people loved. Like I think I can see why there was so much of a story there for people now. But when I was 11, I was like, I don't get this. But
that makes sense. And you know, I think this is the first time I've had a guest on the show. I've heard a lot of friends were also into it and some people whose mom was also into it. But I think this is the first time that a guest has introduced Twilight to their dad and dad got into it. I love that.
Yeah, my mom and I would go see the movies like as they would come out at midnight. And then my dad and I would go later that night so that he also knew what was going on.
That's incredible. What an incredible family tradition that is.
I know. And we're like, I always joke with people, I'm like, we're not like a Twilight family. We're like a Hunger Games family. There are Hunger Games references every single day in my household. But
Morgan, I don't know how to tell you this, but I think you are a Twilight family.
Well, we are that, but like, I'm like, it's not serious. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I think it was something that we could look forward to every year. The movies usually came out right around my birthday, so we were like, oh, it's like fun. We usually had like Thanksgiving break from school, so my siblings would get into it and stuff. We had a good time. I have a lot of nostalgia for that time period. And then eventually like came around to, I'm like, I think like maybe I'm missing something with the book. So I've revisited them several times. And I've had different takeaways each time too. So I think that Stephanie Meyer really succeeded in creating something confounding that you can grow with so many different meanings, I think. So Dusk started as a joke, never intended to see the light of day. And it's kind of grown out of control.
Just completely at the start, for a listener who's maybe never heard of Dusk before, how would you describe it? What is it?
Dusk is a Twilight parody musical. Our full name is actually Dusk, a Bite-Sized Love Story, currently.
Yeah, I was meaning about that. You're going to hear from my lawyers, because we both have Bite-Size in our names, but I can't let that happen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We wrote the show in April 2022, if that's helpful.
Okay, so I will be hearing from your lawyers is what that means.
No, we actually might be shortening the name going forward anyway. So sure. I thought it was cool that we had a similar thought.
No, I think so too.
But no, so it started as completely a joke. I was working on, have been involved in theater my entire life, and in various different roles. I performed growing up in the Chicago area, and then moved and got more into like the production and technical side of things. And I had been working as a choreographer for years and was working on a project that was much more serious. And the morale, this was like one of the first shows coming out of the pandemic where we couldn't really do performances in the same way anymore and all of that. So trying to return to like a sense of normal, but nothing was normal anymore. And the morale was very low, and the content of that show was fairly serious. So I would joke like, oh guys, like, in my Twilight parody musical, like, you can do that, whatever. I was just, there was no Twilight parody musical. I was making it up and just kind of joking with a friend of mine. And here we are now. Yeah, we made the joke in front of who became the producer of last year's production. And she was like, I have no idea what Twilight is. So we horrified her with the plot. And she's like, I don't understand, but if you show me a script, we'll do it. I wrote a script in like 3 hours as a joke, being like, no one but the 4 people that heard about this are seeing it. And then 3 days later, they're like, this is going to Edinburgh Fringe if you want it to. So let's get that worked out. And then we did. So it was like a joke that went too far, but here we are still. That's
incredible. Was Fringe last year the first time Dusk went up, or has it been performed other places like here in the States?
We performed a workshop I live in Erie, Pennsylvania. We performed a workshop here. And then that's kind of a lot of clips from that were what people were seeing before Fringe, and
got it.
They got popular enough on TikTok that we had a small following, and we ended up selling out the Fringe run, which was really unexpected to all of us. And then we were like, oh, we have to, like, this can't be only a joke anymore. We should really put a lot more thought into this, because people have opinions and they want to see it done elsewhere. So we've focused for the last year on trying to give people what they want, but also make it a little bit more meaningful than it originally was.
Yeah.
It's definitely still in development, but it's been a fun project to work on for sure.
Yeah. What would you say is the future of Dusk? Obviously, you've got Fringe coming up in August of this year. UK listeners, get on that. But what else do you have planned, or at least dreamed, for this show?
Right now, my biggest goal, because Dusk started as kind of a way to get people excited about performing again, I would love to get the performance rights out. So we've had a bunch of people ask, like, are these rights licensable? And we would love to do it like with a high school, or I don't know if it's high school material, but like with a college or community theater. And it lends itself really well to a larger cast. And we can't really do that with, I don't know. I mean, we started talking a little bit about touring options and stuff potentially too. And it's harder to do professional theater with large casts, but it lends itself so well to a large cast. So I would love to see community theaters or universities or something get to do it. It's just putting the show together. There's so many different characters that people kind of have an idea of what they want them to be like, and also like how they would change them. And it's very self-aware and like tongue-in-cheek and stuff at a lot of points. So everyone comes in with ideas and passion for the source material and everything, and then points that they want to highlight in making fun of. So it would be cool to do that with larger groups. I would love to see that happen. But right now we're mainly focused on the Fringe show this summer, which is the accidental sequel to Dusk. We had so many requests to do material from the sequels of Twilight and couldn't really fathom the amount of time that we spent on Dusk.
There's just so much.
There's so much. And we were on such a rushed timeline. Like, I told you the joke was made in April 2022, and then the Fringe show opened last August.
August of 2023. Yeah, that's an incredible turnaround.
But before that, we had a workshop production that went up in February. So it was so fast. Wow. And when we started it, like, I didn't have an orchestrator, or I'm sorry, I didn't have an orchestrator, but I didn't have a composer. Like, there was no music. So everything needed to be built from scratch.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but music is a pretty important part of a musical.
Yeah, you would think, right?
Definitely comes in handy. Good to have.
Originally, when I pitched it, I was like, so here it is, and it's a jukebox musical, because it was never going to be performed.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was only like stuff from the soundtracks. I'm like, these are iconic soundtracks. Imagine that.
You could do
stage.
that pretty easily with all like the Paramore and Muse songs in there. I feel like you could definitely get away with that.
For sure, except I have no relation or contacts to any of the production companies.
Yeah. Practically, you could get away with it. Legally, probably not.
No, not legally at all. So we like, just as a joke, we're like, should we see how much it would cost to do like one song or something? And the answer is, we don't have the money to research that, because it's so involved of a process, and there's a reason that jukebox musicals can take like 20 years to write, and we didn't have 20 years. So I was like, all right, cool, we're finding a composer, we're turning things around really fast. And then we did, and now we're excited to focus on slightly new material, but we're like, we can't write for 3 to 5 or however many sequels people are expecting. So we asked people on Instagram to vote, like, what new material would you like to see? And of these unreleased songs that we have, like, what are you interested in? And it ended up being points from New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn, which worked out really well. So now we've structured this year's Fringe show as almost like a mini sequel to Dusk last year. So it's been exciting. That's been a lot more fun to work on this time around, because there's just like so much content and so many plot lines to get into.
Definitely. Speaking of someone who is also taking a very close look at what exactly goes on in these 5 movies, boy, it's a lot to work through. And you could, I mean, if you really wanted to, you could absolutely do one play per movie, if not one play per book, definitely.
Yeah, it would be easy to get carried away with it for sure.
Speaking of getting carried away with things, that wasn't going anywhere, but that's the only segue I got right now. Let's get into the scene we're talking about in this episode. Bella is out in the driveway of the Swan household. She's washing her truck. Edward shows up. He leaves right as Billy and Jacob Black show up to watch a baseball game. It's all very cryptic and awkward and a little threatening. Let's get into the details now. Bella is washing her truck. It's pretty rainy out there. Never a great day to wash your car when it's raining. You're going to get spots that way. And Edward continues something that he's been doing the last few scenes, really the last 3 or 4 scenes of this movie, is he's being a drama queen. He comes down from the top of the truck. We don't see him jump up there, which I feel kind of robbed. I want to see him get up there.
Could you act human? I mean, I've got neighbors.
I'm gonna take you to my place tomorrow.
Hey man, there's like people around. It's like broad. It's the middle of the day. Like people could very easily see you doing vampire stuff out there.
Yes, I have so many thoughts about that whole opening.
I want to hear them all.
Well, you see him drop onto the top of the truck. So I was like, okay, so he's in a tree?
Yeah, but like his car is behind Bella.
And I'm like, she didn't notice that. I also don't believe for a second she cares enough about her car to wash it.
No, definitely not. She has headphones in while she's doing it, which is a terrible idea because that means, like, if there's one thing I know, it's that washing a car, you are going to get wet. And so whatever you're listening to is also going to get wet. But I guess that would explain why she didn't hear him pull up. But like, come on, pay attention a little bit.
So I have to believe this is happening on like a Saturday.
Yeah.
She's going to his house the next day, which I presume is a weekend. And so it's like a Saturday, I don't know, mid-morning, afternoon, whatever, before a baseball game. Shows up to her house and he's like, okay, let me quick climb that tree. She's not going to notice. How long was he there?
Yeah.
And he's just waiting in the tree?
Just for the one drop down, for that one brief surprise.
And my biggest question is for, like, the production, I guess. Like, knowing how long it takes to film something, why was that so important to them? Like, what does it mean?
The only thing I can think of is we're supposed to see, like, a shift in Edward's behavior, whereas, like, early in the movie, he's very, like, quiet and reserved and almost shy to a certain extent. Now that he is out with Bella, he's like a changed man. He's like a young boy in love, basically. He's jumping around and doing goofy, weird stuff. That's the only explanation I can think of.
I agree with that. I have this theory, because I just reread Eclipse the other day, and that he's intended to be a funny character, but like it just never translated. Because there's so many times where I'm like, they're bantering, but like it's not coming across that way because of the delivery.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of those moments. I'm like, he's like pranking her, right? Like that's the intention here, is to be funny. It's just not coming across as funny.
And like, you know, kind of classic high school boy attempt at a flirt, which is just scaring the girl that you like, which, you know, not much of a flirt. But I could see, I can kind of see why it makes sense for him to do, but not if you're trying to hide the fact that you're a vampire, man. Come on.
Like, imagine her dad looks outside and he's like, why is that guy in a tree?
Right. Or like the people that walk across the street in the background of one scene, if they had just been like 20 seconds earlier, they would have seen him do all of that and known something was up. It makes sense kind of for Edward as the character. It does not make sense for Edward as the way he has described himself over the last hour, basically.
Right. And like he had to have pulled up while she was already out there doing that, because otherwise she'd walk out and see his cars there.
Yeah.
I just have a lot of questions. I'm like really I don't know. I don't want to for sure put this on Catherine Hardwicke, but whoever made the decision, you jumping out of a tree, landing on the car. I'm like, what did that mean to you? Like, what were we conveying?
Yeah. Right. And even like, we don't even get to see the cool part of that. Like, I imagine from a filming standpoint, he just climbed up on top of the truck and just, you know, when they call action, he pretends like he lands and then jumps down into the bed, which is not the exciting part. Was there more to it in the script that they like couldn't afford the special effects for? I don't know.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions, but I'll accept it for what it is.
Sure. And, you know, that's Twilight in general. I feel like you could, if I had to describe the movie Twilight, I think I would say I have a lot of questions, but I'll take it for what it is. Yeah, he pops out the dent in her car, which is nice, you know, good for him. He says he's going to take her to meet his family. And you mentioned something about Robert Pattinson's delivery earlier, and I'm really going to get deep into that now because Robert, his accent is so slipping during this entire scene. There is a time he says, "So you worried," like a leprechaun or something. It's not his normal Edward voice, and it's not even his normal British accent that he has in interviews. It is some weird combination of the both that makes it just all kinds of wrong.
Wait, like with your family?
Yeah.
What if they don't like me?
So you're worried, not because you'll be in a house full of vampires, but because you think they want to prove you.
I clocked that too. His delivery on I thought was super funny. And the accent was okay there. But then after that, everything did start slipping. I have a little bit of insight into this now, having worked with international casts for the past year and a half.
Oh, sure.
So we have a lot of actors in Dusk that are based in the UK. And then we also had American actors. And trying to teach the American accent in the way it needed to be delivered for the show did mean there were certain words that would come across less American. And sometimes we had to make compromises with okay, so maybe we're not so focused on the regional dialect or something like that. We're just trying to have it not be very blatantly English.
Right.
And I'm I don't know, maybe they had to compromise with him. Maybe he couldn't do ours well or so. I don't know. I did notice that. There's another time later, I think in the movie, he says the window or something like that. And I'm what is this accent? And it's the same one that he uses here.
It's been a problem for him in this entire movie, but this is, I think, the worst that it's been so far.
It was rough, for sure.
What is it?
Complication. I'll pick you up tomorrow.
He senses something coming up the street. It's Billy and Jacob Black. And, it's a vampire, so it makes sense he notices them before Bella does, before they are there to see him. But my question to you is, how does he notice the Blacks driving up? Does he smell them first, or does he hear their thoughts first?
I'm assuming he smells them first, because I don't think they see him yet, unless they smell him too. I don't know.
Yeah. And I don't know how his mind reading works. Does he have to focus on someone, or can he just sort of hear it all the time?
I think he hears it all the time and has to focus more to tune it out.
That must be awful.
Yeah, that would be torture. I would assume he smells them first, because I think if they saw him and then were thinking, then it would probably be really mean thoughts, and that would obviously get his attention.
Yeah, that would make sense. And smell is a weirdly important sense in the Twilight books. It comes up a lot.
It's in the first movie, it's his whole thing.
Yeah, and later on, far down the road, when Bella gets turned, it's they have a whole conversation about how smell is different. It's weird. To go back to an earlier scene, but the way that Bella and Edward first meet, and with the fan, and when he smells her, it's just so weird. Why is there so much smelling in this movie?
Why does he do it so aggressively, though, is my question. He could have, if we were supposed to see that kind of reaction again, he could have done it here.
Yeah. Because Edward is a drama queen. That's it.
That's my favorite thing about him, honestly.
I forgot how much there is of it. Because when you watch the first hour of this movie, he's a lot more reserved. And really just in general in the movies, he doesn't go out of his way to do big weird things like other people in the movies do. But for some reason, just in the last 5 or 6 scenes or whatever, he's just been kind of a diva.
He's the one scene, he's the worst thing I could possibly do is sparkle, and I have to show her that. You don't understand how bad I am because I glitter, right?
You have to see this, but why? Why does she have to see that?
Right. We've had fun playing around with that, reactions to stuff like that in Dusk, because it's dude, it could be so much worse. No, he's so dramatic. I love it. I wouldn't love it in a real person, but for him, it's great.
No, but for a guy to watch, it's fun. Speaking of dramatic, he gets out. He drives away as the Blacks are driving up, and they have a nice little slow down, stare down at each other as they pass, which is, again, just for the drama. Billy and Jacob, they're there to watch baseball. And when you mentioned that your dad really liked Charlie, I immediately thought of this part of our scene. Because, I can relate as a guy, I'm not a dad, but as a man in my lower 30s, something about just a couple paper bags full of fried fish and some beer in a baseball game sounds pretty great.
Hey. Come to visit your truck?
Looks good. Got that dent out?
Yeah.
Actually, we came to visit your flat screen. First Mariners game of the season. Plus, Jacob here keeps bugging me about seeing you again.
Great, Dad. Thanks.
Just keeping it real, son.
Vitamin R.
Well done, Chief. Harry Clearwater's homemade fish fry.
Good man.
Any luck with that whaling case?
Well, I don't think it was an animal that killed him.
Never thought it was.
So spread the word out of the res, huh? Keep the kids out of the woods.
Will do. Don't want no one else getting hurt, do we?
Yeah, I mean, they're so normal compared to everything else going
They
on.
really
Like,
are.
I feel like Stephanie Meyer did this thing where she created a very real landscape that this is all taking place in, like the world building and all of that. Like, it feels like a high school setting pretty accurately most of the time. And a lot of the side characters feel so like real and developed in comparison to the protagonists. And I think Charlie and Billy are two of those for sure.
Definitely.
Like, they come on screen and it's just like, oh, okay, now we're like back into reality a little bit.
Speaking of Charlie, where does he come from in this scene? He just sort of appears from the background. We don't see, he wasn't in the truck with the blacks. We don't see him drive up or anything. He just sort of shows up. He just sort of walks up from in the driveway out of the street carrying too much beer.
Was his car parked like down a hill, or I don't know.
Or did he just pull up right as Edward was pulling out or something? Did he see the weird stare down? I don't know.
I think if he had seen the stare down, then there may have been more of a case against her not hanging out with him later.
Yeah.
But no, he definitely could have just gotten there. Maybe he went and he bought the beer or something. I'm thinking actually that might be it, because Edward probably wouldn't come and lurk in her tree knowing her dad's home and could watch.
Yeah, probably not. If he could hear Charlie in the house, he probably wouldn't have been jumping around like that. You know what? That's a great point, and I believe it now. It is sort of weird, though, to not show him arriving, to just have him walk up out of the street with a bunch of beer.
I will say, all of the weird stuff in this scene, I didn't clock that. Like, that seemed the most normal to me.
And yet, in something like Twilight, it is the normal things that stand out.
Yeah, yeah.
The scene ends with everyone going in the house, just sort of being weird and again, being kind of overly dramatic. Like, Billy Black is just sort of staring at people saying, like, I never thought it was an animal and I don't want anyone else to get hurt. And just being weirdly cryptic and foreshadowing.
Yeah, he's like an ominous oracle.
Yeah.
The things I know about that character, too, I'm like, every time he's on screen, he's got something ominous to say.
Just like Edward at the very beginning of this scene, for a guy who has a supernatural secret that he doesn't want to get out about him and his family, he sure is acting mighty suspicious.
I don't understand why he is so suspicious either, because I, having just reread the one book, remembered like the werewolf gene, I guess, skips a generation, so he never was a werewolf. It's like... Oh,
really?
Yeah. So I guess he never was one, but his father and Jacob are.
Yeah.
But he's still like, he's so in it. Like, he wears a bag of vampire ashes around his neck at all times.
You're really enlightening me today, because that makes a lot more sense. If he doesn't have a secret about himself to hide, he just really hates these vampires and is trying to blame every bad thing on them.
During the stare down, though, I'm like, what is Jacob thinking his dad is doing? Because he doesn't know anything about this stuff yet. Like, he doesn't find out until the next movie. So I'm like, why does he think his dad's just staring down this teenager? And he seems cool with it. Like, he's fine with it.
Well, Jacob's too busy being embarrassed that his dad is talking about him in front of his crush.
That's so true.
He's got normal teen boy stuff going on, and that's the most relatable part.
I'm wondering, like, I have a theory now, maybe. Have you heard that Robert Pattinson was almost fired for being too serious?
No, I've heard the opposite, really. I've heard that he hated being on set, like, did not enjoy working on Twilight at all.
That's true.
Didn't take it seriously enough. What do you mean being too serious?
I guess the first movie, they flew his agent out and, like, approached him halfway through filming, or, like, part of the way through filming, and were like, listen, you're going to get fired from this movie if you don't stop acting so broody and, like, angry and upset all the time or whatever. Like the character needs to be a little bit more lighthearted than that. And then you can, which I assume like they just didn't reshoot anything. And then that's where like the tone shift happens with the character. And I wonder if this was one of the first ones they filmed after that conversation, because the whole demeanor is so different.
Yeah, he's definitely all smiles in this one.
Yeah, but it never comes up this way again. I never see him this relaxed ever in the series. So I don't know. Whatever he did, I guess, like, worked because he kept the job. But
that's incredible and something I'm definitely going to be looking out for as I continue to go through this movie. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Of course.
All right. I'm going to ask my last question of this part of the show. If you had to give this scene a name, what would it be? And this is also going to be the name of the episode, so please make it good.
That is so much pressure.
No wrong answers.
I'm coming from Edward's point of view here. I think it would be, I want to be funny, but I have responsibilities. It's complicated.
I want to be funny, but I have responsibilities. It's complicated.
That about sums up everything he does in this scene, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That's his whole character. And really, my internal struggle as well. How dare you come on my show and read me for filth like that?
I'm so sorry.
No worries. Morgan, if people want to hear more about you, maybe learn more about Dusk, maybe see it on demand or in person or listen to the soundtrack, where can they do those kind of things?
We have a link tree in our Instagram bio where you can find all of that information. The handle on pretty much all of our social medias is @Dusk_musical. And we've got a recording of the show from last year out. We're going to be recording this year's show too, if anyone's interested in how we're parodying sequel material. That'll be coming out probably in the fall. I
certainly am, and I certainly can't wait to see what made the cut, because there is just so much you could fit into. How long is the show?
This one's only 50 minutes, so I can tell you if you want to know, because we haven't told anybody yet. But
you don't have to tell me. I'll wait and find out like everyone else, or you can tell me once we're done recording.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Can't wait to find out. If you want to follow the show on social media, this show, Bite Sized, you can do so on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at bitesized_, where I post reels and stuff like that. Old clips, new clips, all that kind of stuff happens on those sites. You can also send an email to myfavoritetwilightpodcast@gmail.com. And if I like it, I'll read it on the air. All that information and more available at twilightpodcast.com. If you like the show, please subscribe, follow, rate it, whatever it is you do on your podcast app that helps the algorithm give me more listeners. Please, I need them. Thank you to my editor, Ben Oxher, for putting this all together. Thank you to the band Swimwear Department for letting me use their song Mauled to Death as our theme. Thank you to Kellen Lutz for listening to this show. It's going to happen one day. I just have to keep putting it out there. And that is it. That is all the time we have for this episode of Bite Sized. As we always say at the end of every episode,
embrace the drama.
Embrace the drama. See you next time.
So you're worried, not because you'll be in a house full of vampires, but because you think they want to prove you.